Good afternoon. I'm Ted Koskoris, head of school at Thayer Academy. Pardon my waiting for some folks to roll in, but this is our seventh annual professional women's networking event. It's a tribute, I think, to the sense of creativity and purpose of two of our trustees, Kathy Horrigan and Brenda Lyons, who really are the founders of this event. Both of them are executives at State Street Bank, and each of them has been deeply interested over the course of their own careers in promoting opportunities for women to gather together and men who are allied in those very same purposes to really underscore the commitment of women to move forward in their careers and to utilize their own associations with one another in doing so. So we're deeply appreciative of the work of Brenda and Kathy in being so supportive of this endeavor. I do want to open up with some opportunities to catch up with things happening at their academy. As you know, we have been restricted to stay-at-home conditions, social distancing, since the middle of March, really, and we returned to school after school vacation in April, and we've used our Thayer Connect program to continue with our mission. Our faculty and our students have demonstrated tremendous resilience in adapting these new technologies to move forward with our academic program. We've sustained our communal bonds, and we've worked very hard to make sure that our students have healthy and purposeful routines in these somewhat shapeless days under quarantine. So it's been, I think, received very positively by all parties, and I know that we all feel that we're moving ahead in ways that are productive. Just yesterday, we had a drive-through where our seniors came through campus in their vehicles and picked up, in accordance with social distancing requirements, their yearbooks, and they picked up banners for their front lawns in celebration of their imminent graduation from Thayer Academy. And it was a really uplifting event. I think the seniors, felt very heartened to be back on campus, to be able to see one another from afar in their vehicles. But we had actually lined the roads on our campus with faculty, staff, and administrators. And I think our students were very heartened to see them. And I can say very sincerely that we in turn were heartened to see our students. It's been a while since we've seen them. And the whole reason we are at their academy is really on behalf of students. And to see their bright faces, somewhat masked by the mask that they were required to wear was very, very uplifting for all of us. And I think it was just a great event. Moving forward, we do have plans to confer diplomas on our traditional day of graduation, but we've also secured a date in August in the event that we're able to have a proper commencement ceremony. In the event that that is not available to us, then we'll bring our seniors and their families back together in May to celebrate their graduation from their academy and do a full-fledged formal ceremony in their honor. We're looking very much forward to having them come back and really joining in celebration with them for all that they've accomplished. I want to thank folks as well. We sent out the other day an appeal for the annual fund. As you can well imagine, many families are feeling stressed as a result of the financial circumstances surrounding the COVID virus. And the school is committed to summoning more resources to support those families both this year and in years forward, so that they can continue to have the benefits of a Thayer education. And we've already received quite a few handsome responses to the annual fund appeal, and I'm very, very thankful for that. And for those of you who are so inclined, of course, we would appreciate your support for that very, very worthy endeavor. I'm going to now turn things over to Kelly Tuthill, who's a Thayer Academy graduate from the class of 1988. Kelly is currently VP for Marketing and Communications at Regis College. She spent 25 years in broadcast journalism prior to that, most of which was at WCV BTV in Boston. She covered notable events such as the Boston Marathon bombing, the Whitey Bulger trial, the Patriots' first Super Bowl victory, the historic Red Sox World Series win in 2004, and just a number of major events that have characterized and informed the experience in the Boston area. She's an award winner. She's won an Emmy, 3 national headliner awards, and just recently, she also earned her PhD in higher education, a remarkable example of multitasking, if ever I can think of one. So, Kelly, very thankful that you're here, and congrats on all that you've accomplished, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ted. Thanks for that kind introduction, and hello to everybody. You left out that I'm also the mother of 3, and just before I turned on the video, the 4-year-old came in thinking it's hysterical to Zoom bomb me at every opportunity. So I have lots to share with you today too on this panel. But I'm grateful for all the alumni, fellow alumni, parents, faculty, and staff from all over the country who have tuned in today. And I know you're all here because we have such a great panel. I want to remind you, you can chat with each other and use the chat function, and also put in some questions by using the Q&A button. So this is supposed to be interactive, and we look forward to hearing from you throughout. We have 3 great panelists with us today. Colleen Baselli, parent, class of 20, principal at Strength Catalyst Partners. And Colleen, I'll start with you. Just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, please.
All right, thanks, Kelly. I'm speaking to all of you from my home office here in Cohasset. And yes, I'm a parent of Mary Claire, graduating senior, as well as a 27-year-old, a 26-year-old, and a 21-year-old who's in college. Professionally, basically, I've had 2 careers in my life. I spent the first half of my work life in the advertising industry, worked for some of the big multinational ad agencies, and I was in the account management end of the business, so the person who leads the team, certainly as a growing in my career. But I made a pretty big career pivot when I got into senior management and started thinking about what I enjoyed about my job and what was draining me about my job. And I decided that I liked when people would come into my office with some kind of career challenge or another, not getting promoted or not getting along with someone. And I listened to their challenges and liked to help them sort them through. So I discovered executive coaching and became an executive coach. And now I've been doing this for about 18 years since Mary Claire was born. And I work with, been doing a long time, work with a wide range of organizations. In the last few years, my biggest clients have been Google, the Red Sox, unfortunately, a little hold right now. And I also do a lot of coaching for a platform for women. I'll mention now, Landit, LANDIT.com, which is a really great resource for career tips, that kind of thing. So anyway, that's a little background on me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Colleen. We'll get back to you in a second. Next, we want to introduce Robin Hodis, class of 84, my time there, Director of Governance and Transparency, the B team, coming to us live from Germany. Robin, good afternoon. Well, good evening.
Just about evening. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. It's a real honor, and I'm excited to be able to join you because obviously a lot of Thayer events are a little bit out of reach. So great that even terrible moments bring us together again. Yeah, I'm Robin Hodis. I attended Thayer from 6th through 12th grade, had a great experience there. I went on to study history and international relations, and I guess I'd say one of the defining moments in my first undergraduate studies and then studies overall was going abroad for a year and how I sort of got bit by a bug. I studied in the UK and then ended up ping-ponging back and forth through my 20s, basically never quite getting through the desire to keep on with the studies. So a big congratulations there, Kelly, for having just finished your PhD. Mine was a long time ago, but I ended up being able to parlay all of that into a very international career, so I've been really lucky. And I've been in Germany now for about 20 years. I have 2 teenage boys. One is also a senior. So he's experiencing, some of that lack of closure that many of the Thayer students, I'm sure, are going through about this school year. And yeah, I've been really lucky from a number of perspectives in terms of watching my role as a woman and a professional woman. I'm in the nonprofit sector. I worked for 20 years for an international nonprofit and was lucky enough to rise up through the ranks there. I was the first woman in senior management, and I was the first woman to run the organization, albeit on an acting basis. But I was proud of that, and that was something I sort of had to work for The current organization I'm in, it's called the B Team, and we're working on how business needs to be a part of change in society and how business can do better and lead better. And there, one of the focuses is on gender balance in business and in senior business roles, and also in the boardroom, a very important thing. So that's been sort of an agenda that's been given to me and my colleagues. But then one of the things I'm doing by choice is I've joined the board of a small nonprofit here in Berlin that's focusing on fair share of women in leadership roles, and has been looking at how there are real imbalances still. There's an awful lot of women who work in nonprofit and non-governmental organizations, something like 70-30 in terms of the number of women working in nonprofit sector, but it's overrepresented at the top by men. And how do women get into those roles? And that's some of the things that that nonprofit is looking at. So great to join you all.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. And finally, Allison Kent Trumbull, OO, President of Thayer's Alumni Association Board and a lawyer licensed in Massachusetts. Allison, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining, everybody, and thanks for having me. So yes, I am a 2000 graduate of Thayer. I think a little unique maybe in my Thayer story is that I started Thayer in the 12th grade, in the 9th grade. And you know, it wasn't, let's say, my first choice at that time. So my parents and I have some fun stories about that transition. And we can certainly talk a little later on in the panel about, you know, what I've learned through Thayer and with that transition. But here I am as the alumni board president. So for any parents whose children maybe are anticipating a challenging transition or still undergoing one, it can all work out. So so there's that. I graduated in 2000, went on and graduated from undergrad, graduated from Hamilton College after studying government. And with that degree, I was interested in the law, but also interested in business and not exactly sure what I wanted to do sort of right out of undergrad. So I was fortunate enough to join State Street Global Advisors, which is a large asset management part of a large corporation, global corporation, and found just wonderful contacts, experience, and network there. So after working for about 6 years in both business and then moving to the legal department, I decided to go back to law school and studied at Suffolk University here in Boston. It was an interesting time because it was between 2009 and 2012, and there was certainly some economic developments in that time too that were challenging, which is similar to what we're seeing or maybe going to see here now with COVID-19. So happy to chat if our discussion takes us that way as well. I did focus on business and financial law at Suffolk, and I also had an abroad experience one summer, which really opened my eyes up to in career to a whole world of international law, which I've really enjoyed. So I joined Deckert, which is a global law firm. I was based here in Boston and was with them for about 4 or 5 years, and then moved on back to State Street Global Advisors, where in legal department as a lawyer, where I'd made some really strong contacts and really enjoyed going back in-house and practicing in that capacity. And again, given the experience that I had had with my global law certificate or studies, was able to continue fostering global relationships through State Street and some other organizations that I've continued to really cherish and appreciate. So I was there for about 4 or 5 more years again, and then in December 2019 was offered a position in a company called Brightsphere Investment Group, also asset management, but a little bit of a different model, smaller than State Street, and they were seeking just their third lawyer to sort of head up their centralized asset management and global expansion, global distribution work. So asset management, check, global distribution, check, and the global expansion was going to be my new sort of challenge, as well as just being the third lawyer on a small team and that leadership opportunity. And it was a wonderful experience for about 3 or 4 months. But with COVID, the organization decided to move away from their sort of centralized global distribution and expansion model. So that is an interesting event that I am living through right now in my career with COVID-19 and the outcomes. And happy to discuss that as well as part of the topics.
Okay, perfect segue. We in my former business of TV news, we appreciate a good segue, so that's perfect. You know, these are tough times, and when we planned the panel each spring, we could have never pictured this is the situation we'd find ourselves in, all from our homes, and focusing on some topics, including unexpected job changes as a result of this. So let's start with navigating this COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like the panelists to talk about, based on your experiences, like what are your recommendations, your advice for others? And I'm going to start with you, Colleen. You're an executive coach, and I think, speak for many of us on this call today. Help! This is so challenging. The studies are showing people are working 3 more hours a day. I didn't know any of us had 3 more hours a day to give to our workplace. It is so stressful. And I know personally, I go to bed every night thinking, who got shortchanged today? Because I didn't do a particularly good job with at least one, if not all, of the segments of my life right now. So Colleen, please help us.
All right, thanks, Kelly. There are so many things I could talk about, but I'm going to talk about resilience, because I think it's really important to know how to access your own resilience for managing through these tough times. So I'm a strength strategist, and that means that I'm focused on helping people deepen their self-awareness around their own unique strengths. And this is the approach I typically take in my client work. And so what I know is this: one of the ways we can be resilient in times of stress right now is by leveraging our strengths. And we all have particular strengths that give us energy. And when you use them, you feel authentic and you feel in control. And this whole concept is rooted in the principles of positive psychology. So what I think you need to do is think about, what do you do well when you feel authentic, when you feel strong? And if you're a relationship deepener, then put your energies into staying connected to people with whom you already have or really value a long-term relationship. If you're someone who loves to learn new things, then like now's a great time. Take up a new hobby. Or if you're an organizer, get your garage sorted or your desktop files, in better alignment. Or if you love to be creative, do that. Intentionally using your strengths really gives you confidence. And the second thing I'd say as a way to stay strong, especially if you need to make some kind of a career pivot, is to visualize the future you want to achieve, because the psychological research on behavior change tells us that in order for us to achieve our goals, we're best served if we can visualize that outcome we hope to create. So that means just sitting quiet and really like closing your eyes and for a few moments imagining the future, or even describing to someone else, what is it you want to achieve or what is it you want to find? And when you focus on your goals and your desires that way, you have some really important benefits. You can get more creative. You're more likely to perceive and like recognize the resources that you're going to need. And you build your internal motivation to take the actions that you need to achieve your dreams. And then I want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
The third tip I have is to practice gratitude. Reminding ourselves that we're grateful is one of the most powerful ways we can boost our psychological immune system. And this really keeps us mentally resilient. And people who have practiced gratefulness, they have higher levels of happiness, they have higher levels of psychological well-being, we have less stress, we sleep better, we have more success at work. And one little tip is that I practice gratitude every day with an app on my phone. It's called the 5-Minute Journal, and I've been using it every day, actually since the fall. And so before I get out of bed every morning, I open the app and I write a few words in response to 2 questions. One is, what are 3 things I'm grateful for? And the second question is, what are 3 things I'm going to do to make today great? And then I get out of bed, and then at the end of the day, I have a little prompt, and around 10 o'clock, it sends me a prompt and it asks me, what are 3 amazing things that happened today. And then it prompts you to attach a single photo. So it could be what I made for dinner, or, you know, a view I had on my walk, or how nice my desk is organized before I go to bed. You know, I keep it super simple, but it causes me to reflect daily. And I love the opportunity to kind of scroll through, which I do most nights, and just see all those pictures. And it kind of reminds me, you know what, I have lots of things to be thankful and resilient for. So those are my 3 tips.
I wrote it down. I grabbed a pen. So if you don't have a pen, you might need one, folks on the call, because there's some good advice and you might want to write it down. So Allison, as you said, I mean, you're struggling, right? I assume, I'm making assumptions here. I'll let you explain it, you know, to find that gratitude when life changes in a way that you didn't expect. So talk to me about how you're approaching this. I saw a question pop up already. Somebody wants to know, how do we virtually network? What do we do when we find ourselves that job we thought we had got rescinded, or we're facing furloughs or layoffs? Talk to us about how you're going to approach it, Allison, or how you are approaching it.
I think just tangible, one of my first steps was to really just put together a list of contacts and thinking of the future and where you would want to be, where I would want to work in Boston, because I would prefer to stay in Boston at this point in my life. Maybe traveling at another time would be great, but at this point, putting together contacts, and then I had aspirations of really going through and reaching out to everyone. But as life has it, I also have 2 small kids, and just the day-to-day has really changed. So I think putting together the list and executing on a few of those was really something that I did, and am glad I did. And I'm not getting too upset with myself for not making it all the way through my list yet. And then taking sort of things as they come. Opportunities have been popping up, and by opportunities, I mean, opportunities to chat and talk with people. I've also been I've said I've reached out to people in different ways that I probably wouldn't have before, and I have not reached out to certain people in ways that I would have before. So I'm not calling a friendly acquaintance for coffee because we can't get together for coffee, and I think I haven't had, the ability, or haven't had the time, or just to know what to say to that sort of casual work acquaintance of, how's it going? Oh, by the way, it seems like it might be a little awkward for me with certain people, but I have been more aggressive in other ways. So for example, in 2014, when I was at Deckard, I had been approached about an in-house position at another asset manager in Boston. And I really enjoyed the firm, really enjoyed the folks who I interviewed with. And I think that I ended up having another opportunity, and it was a better fit technically for my practice. But I reached out to the folks who I interviewed with, at least 3 of them at that firm in 2014. And that's, I don't know, something I would have done otherwise. And, with one of them, they've since moved on, but she's been a wonderful contact, and we've kept in touch over the weeks. And in that initial conversation was, hey, if you recall, we interviewed in 2014. I was really impressed by your organization, and they happen to have a job posted, which has been posted for over 30 days, and they are in a hiring freeze. But it was a good segue into a conversation, and it's been ongoing. She's at a different firm, and so I've actually been able to explore some opportunities at her new firm. And I also reached out to 2 other folks who I interviewed with at that firm who, we haven't gone back and forth, but I did get responses, which in my opinion, that was, if they responded, that's a good thing. And if they didn't, that's okay too. But just to keep those conversations going, and the dialogue from a career perspective, or going down the list, or as opportunities come up, to try to make those connections. And I think what Colleen said though about strengths is really important, because my legal career, I think there is a traditional legal career path where you go to undergrad, and this is maybe a stereotype, you go to undergrad, you study pre-law, you go to a top tier law school, and you excel, and then you go to a big firm and you're there for 8 years, and then maybe you go in-house, or maybe you strive to make partner. And I think that the way my story has evolved is different. And I own my story and I really enjoy it. I think at this time where I'm making a change or looking for something new, sometimes I'm a little bit worried about that my story versus, you know, what I visualize as the, you know, ideal story. And I think mentally I just need to sort of step away from that and be confident in the story that I have, which I've thoroughly enjoyed thus far, and be grateful for all of those experiences that I've had, and sort of use that as confidence in reaching out to folks for networking purposes. And I would say that the Thayer Alumni Board and the Thayer Alumni Association is really a network to this entire community, and they're wonderful. And every time I've connected with a Thayer alum or parent, it's a wonderful network for those of you who may be looking for a network to connect within.
Yeah, it's very important. You know, just when you were speaking, I reflected on the fact that early on, one of my friends said to me, "Oh, do you want to hop on a Zoom at night and we can all talk?" And I kind of rolled my eyes. I'm on Zoom with work so much of the day. The thought of getting on with some women at the end of the day on something I didn't have to do seemed frivolous and like, no, I should be with my family. But I said yes. And those kind of check-ins have proved to be really important in my own life. You know, that's when you can grab a glass of wine and feel like a grown-up with a life other than just chained to all the responsibilities. And there's some power in hearing the similar shared experiences. And I've started to reach out and ask other different groups to do it. And one other thought is that in the morning, I'm up anyway, I got to walk a dog. I talk to the COO at my workplace, and we kind of talk out everything in the morning. I put the earbuds in and just walk around, and it seems silly. You know, 7 in the morning we're starting, but the two of us bounce things off each other, and she and I just, I think, start our day better because we've had some input from somebody else we trust, share the common frustrations, and then help each other find some solutions. And it's kind of been our routine. If we don't start, I think both of us feel like our day didn't quite start right. So I'm speaking for her, but I think she values it as much as I do. So they are powerful, these connections. And I'd like to turn now to you, Robin, because give us a little bit of the big picture and how women are playing and experiencing this pandemic differently and leading through this pandemic differently.
Yeah, first let me say I can really identify with all the challenges everybody's going through. I mean, there's a great saying in German, which is like, you can be a good enough parent. And I think we have to keep that in mind. We're good enough right now, and good enough is good enough. And we have to cut ourselves some slack. You know, after all, we heard early on, and I think it's an important and wise thing, we're not working from home, we're working through a pandemic. And there's a lot of stress associated with that. And that, I think, is one of the points I've made, that studies are showing right now that women are really imbalanced in terms of how they're being impacted by this pandemic. You know, there's more work at home. You mentioned it at the beginning. They're taking care of children. Childcare issues are disproportionately affecting women. And in economic downturns, there's more violence in the home and domestic abuse. And there's just a lot of knock-on effects of an economic downturn and the kind of health scares and worries that we're all going through right now. So, I mean, that's where we can all be affected personally. But I think, you know, there's some positive news and good news out there for how women are coping. And we do have coping skills. And many of you will have seen the memes around women leaders in the world. I mean, in the country I live in, Angela Merkel, she's doing a good job. Her popularity rates have gone up again. She's seen as a real stalwart and a real strength in the European setting. But it's not just her. In Taiwan, there's a woman prime minister she's leading. Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand has got a lot of headlines. She was an incredible strength following that terrible massacre in Christchurch last year. And I think she showed that there's a much more compassionate way that you can lead. She spoke out to refugees in her country, and she showed them welcomeness and warmth, and did it with a different quality. And equally, at Easter time, she said, you know, that the Easter Bunny was an essential worker in New Zealand, and kind of spoke to the children in her country. And we've seen a number of Nordic leaders, women leaders leading. So I think there's a lot of examples for how women in leadership roles right now are getting things right, not only in terms of the numbers in their countries and so on, but in terms of the trust values that they're getting from across their societies.
Yeah, I mean, that's great observations. And I think we have been watching those leaders from afar. And it kind of brings me back to Colleen, where you started, where you talked about those strengths. We have probably some young people on this conversation, plus some of us that are not so young, that maybe we're not sure what our strengths are. How do you know? How do you find your own strengths? And how do you get a good assessment of yourself?
Good question. All right, so I have a couple thoughts. One is you can be observant, right, of yourself or let's say of your children and think back to a few things. One is like, what are some of your childhood memories when you were uninhibited? Because we tend to use our strengths much more when we are feeling that no one's watching us or judging us or what have you. So if you think back to when you felt strong as a child, that gives you a clue. Another clue is when you use phrases like, that was so much fun, or I loved being creative, or it felt so good to organize the garage, whatever. Those are indications to yourself, or from other people. Our strengths are also evidenced in things that we learn really quickly, that we absorb really easily, that we're really energized by. So there are ways just in our day-to-day observation, those are just a few small examples. But I think, honestly, the best way to determine your strengths is to use one of the online strength surveys that are available. Many people are familiar with Gallup, or it's now called the Clifton Strengths Finder. It's used in a lot of institutions. I think that's good. But my tip for all of you would be to try something called the Strengths Profile. The website is www.strengthsprofile.com. And they have a 20-minute online survey, super easy set of 180 questions. And what you get at the end of your 20 minutes is a report that importantly breaks out the strengths that you have right now that you're using, you get a lot of energy from, and you feel you perform really well, distinct from your unrealized strengths. So those are the subset among this population of 60 strengths that you have that you're not using for whatever reason right now. It's really important, I think, to know, what could you be doing? What strengths could you be using to make yourself feel stronger or to position yourself even more effectively in a job? The third subset in this survey is learned behaviors. And those are the strengths that you have that drain you. It's really important that we know that even though we're good at something and people give us more responsibility, pat us on the back, thank us for that, it may not be the way you want to spend your time. It can be really draining. So particularly if you're interviewing for a job, you don't want to get yourself caught into a position where you're taking on a role that you're really good at, but that it drains your bucket. Because you want to be able to come home from work, especially as a mom, with your bucket energized and filled. And the last piece that the strengths profile gives you are your weaknesses. So quite simply what you say, I'm not good at and I'm drained by. And I think armed with that kind of information for $14, it's super cheap, you are much better able to be purposeful in what you do. And for those of you who are moms, it's written to an age 14 reading level. So what I have experienced with my own kids, who are probably sick of me talking about this, is that I can really help them boost their confidence. Seeing your strengths on a piece of paper in black and white validates them. And that's particularly, I think, important for teenagers trying to figure out, how am I going to apply to college, or what's my summer job going to be, or what have you. So anyway, that's my long answer to your question.
That's a great answer. And Allison and Robin, either one of you could jump in on this. How do we make sure our strengths are coming through in these unusual kind of times? And we have to do all our meetings and our work via email or Zoom. I worry sometimes about my own, like professional dignity. I feel like I'm not quite on my game. Do either of you have any advice for anybody else that might be feeling that way?
I'll just say it can be great to keep it human. Everybody's working with the same set of constraints and restraints. And you'll all remember that, I think it was the BBC interview about 2 years ago when the expert was online and his kid crawled in the background and he was slapping the kid away. Now people are sort of embracing their child, showing off. I had here, I think if I can find it within grabbing distance, my son sewed me a mask and I was showing it to everyone. You know, look, he learned to sew during the pandemic. I think keeping it human allows people to connect. One of the questions in the box was about effective virtual communication. I think it, you know, it is about engaging those that you talk to. We're all on long phone calls. You need to take a break. It can't be business as usual. As I said, we are operating in difficult times. You need to acknowledge that. It isn't quite as, I think, a tough a climate. I think people need that interaction. I'm actually finding that it's easier to connect to people, to get into people's calendars, of course, because people aren't traveling, they're not on airplanes. So in some ways, some of the things that we've been doing at work have had a lot more turnout, and people, I think, with that vulnerability of what they're going through are quite accessible. So I don't think we need to be at the top of a game, maybe the way we defined it before. I think we're moving toward a new reality with people realizing that we're vulnerable and we need to show some generosity of spirit to those we work with.
Yeah, but Allison, when you're looking for that next big thing, you definitely don't want a kid running in.
No, but I have been interviewing, and I think I've had maybe 8 rounds with one company, and maybe 6 or 8, and there's only one interview during which one or the other child did not come in, and I do think that, you know, the ages of children are also a factor. So I know you mentioned, Kelly, you had a 4-year-old, and they're kind of wild cards. I have a 2.5-year-old, and I guess it was funny when I was thinking of this panel. You know, I was thinking how you can't read the room really when you're in Zoom, which is just a technical sort of, when you're on a panel with people, you can sort of see. But, you know, how far do you take that sort of humanitarian connecting with people? You know, do I say my toddler comes in? Do I say, oh yes, you know, my toddler comes in with a bunch of snacks and wants me to open them? That's happened. And then how far do you take it? Because my toddler is 2.5 and potty training. And so we've gotten some people I do not know, who I hope to impress, have heard some very personal things going on with my children as we go through life at home. So I would say, yes, open up. I think people are definitely, you know, connecting more over those scenarios. And then also when it gets to that point where you're like, no, like I really can't have this person hearing what's going on right now, just make sure you mute and video off. And my 5-year-old is very good at video offing her iPad for her distance learning. That she has quickly figured out how to do that, and you know, walk around the house to participate in her class, but also find snacks or, you know, whatever else she wants to do. So I think that, you know, on the one hand, yes, we're connecting, and I think that's great. People are more available, and then when you get to that point where you want to maintain your professional dignity, you video off and you mute, and you quickly take care of what you need to do, and then come back.
Yeah, I hope you don't get called on. All right, I want to get to some of these questions because they're coming in fast and furiously. So Samantha Berman, an incoming Thayer parent this fall, says, what advice would you give to those who are laid off or had that work offer retracted?
I think the list right off the bat is something that at least has been my sort of tangible thing that I did and that I can go back to. You know, it's a spreadsheet. I sort of had ideas where I would log phone conversations and write notes, and I haven't been that detailed with it, but at least I have that centralized place that I can point to and sort of track. So I think that's, you know, one thing that you can do to feel accomplished, and it's a helpful resource. And then I would say reaching out to networks, and the Thayer network is open to all of you. And so feel free to reach out to the Alumni Association. The development office is also a great contact for identifying who might be in the field in which you're working and looking.
And Colleen, aside from taking the strengths test, which I think is a great idea, the strengths profile, any other advice? There may be people sitting at home, they're on furlough or laid off, and think, you know what, I don't think I want to go back there. maybe now's the time I should pivot? What can you do during this time of closure that could be effective and get you ready to go for when things reopen?
Good question. I think that if you have some certainty around what you want to do, or at least some ideas that you want to do, this is a great opportunity to move into a learning mode, and either to tap into online resources that enable you to get more technical knowledge or more creative knowledge or whatever it might be, or as the other panelists are suggesting, to tap into your network and see what ideas they have for you to increase your knowledge in the particular area that you might want to move into, so that you are more confident in the interviews, so that you have more questions that are well-grounded, so when you are at that stage. I'd say if you're not sure of what you want to do, then yes, of course, start with a strengths profile, but there are so many resources out there, and I'm happy to be one for anyone, to help you think about, what, if you're super interested in kind of exploring, what could it possibly be that you could do next, then it's important to really think about, well, what are the interests that I have? What are the skills that I have? Where do I feel like my greatest gifts that I've been given can be most readily applied, and use this time to kind of think that through. It's a little hard to answer this, without the specifics of the person, but those would be the main things I would think about.
Okay, and Robin, we're also hearing from Giselle Marius, if I'm saying your name right, Thayer class of 16, but has the unfortunate distinction of graduating Yale right now and going into this job market. Any advice, Robin, start, and anybody else chime in, because Giselle needs us right now and needs our encouragement, because it's a tough job market.
Yeah, I think everybody's already said it. Use your networks. Be creative about what you think you can do. I mean, I just want to encourage us, I guess most of the calls, women, probably not all, but women are generally seen as being a bit risk averse in terms of their job choices. And I think, we need to learn to think sideways and outside the box and so on. I had a big career change in a sense. 2 years ago, I was able to take networks with me, but I changed jobs after 18 years. And it was a big change. It was a big change in size of organization, in the security that I had. And I don't regret it, because I felt renewed and it released a lot of energy in the right direction. So I think move to the things that give you energy. If you approach people love talking about themselves. Listen to all of us, right? We can't get us to stop talking. Give them space, and you'll be surprised what you might learn, or who they might know, or what they might think of as you talk to them. And I think every opportunity, feed that curiosity and take a risk, and let people tell a story and see what you can learn from them and from the experience of trying to get yourself out there.
Yeah, it's important. And Allison, I think this next one you could address. Dean Fioto, class of 11, Mrs. Atkinson's grandson, writes that he graduated from law school recently, has a job offer for the fall, and is worried about maintaining motivation to get through the bar exam, considering the job market's really murky. Any thoughts for him to encourage him forward on this path this summer?
Yeah, the bar, man, memories. So that's a beast in and of itself, but a very attainable beast. And I'm actually really curious to know how they are modifying you. I highly doubt they're having everyone going to the convention center in Boston and sitting in the same room to take that exam with their one clear plastic bag of a snack in their life. So it's depending on how it changes, but for studying for the bar, I really think, and someone gave me this advice, and I think it was good. You treat it like a job. So when you wake up in the morning, I don't know what your morning routine is, but go for your run, drink your coffee, eat your breakfast, and then sit down and study for the bar with, and presumably there's an outline, whether it's Barbary or something like that, but go through the outline and then take that break in the middle of the day and then go back and sit down and study for several more hours, and then take your dinner break, talk to a couple people, and then sit down and study. Or for the bar, I really enjoyed just doing questions at night. It was a little bit sort of easier rather than going through all the notes and studying, but still keeping your head in the zone. And so actually, as I say this, I would say for the bar, and I'm sure this applies to other exams as well, it's a mental zone that one needs to be in, and you do have to block out other things in your life. And I think that was a little bit challenging for me at that time, and probably for some people who are close to me at that time. But you really do have to forego, and maybe it's easier in quarantine, you know, the family birthday dinner, or to stay in that mental zone. With that said, I think the zone period, at least for the bar, and if you're taking it in late July, you can start your zone period kind of like second to last week in June. Don't start it too early, because, you know, and people say you don't want to burn out. Maybe that's what it is, burning out or not burning out. But just for what you need to pass that exam, I think a good, you know, 4 to 6 weeks is the mental zone area. And you really do, you block everything out except for that exam, and your health, and you know, your whatever you need to do with your body to stay healthy and mentally clear. And then when you're done, you're still not going to know for a little while whether or not you passed, which is one of those cool things about the bar exam. You have to wait months, right? But you're done, and you accomplished something by going and sitting for those 2 days of that exam, however they end up doing it now. And you can feel good about that, and confident still when you're going into your job market, because you will know more law in those 6 weeks, at the end of those 6 weeks, than you will ever know, because you don't practice across all of it. So at least you can walk away with that on the day you walk out of that exam, knowing that you know more law in that day, and you put it all out there, and then you'll practice and start to focus, and yeah. And congrats on having a job lined up for the fall.
Yeah, stick with it. You've come this far. I think there's a parent question. I think it goes to what Allison was speaking about earlier. The parent's Marie Cairo, parent 25. Any advice for communicating the value in the untraditional career path experiences? So I know, Robin, you said on the chat, if I saw it go by correctly, that you had a thought about that. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I started out working in non-governmental organizations and nonprofits, it wasn't so much a thing. Nobody in my family knew how to advise me in that, and I didn't even know I was going in that direction. And here I am all these years later. I think that, you know, we'll all have heard of groups like Amnesty International and Greenpeace and some of the big ones, but it's a whole really, I think, burgeoning field, and there have been challenges, but, you know, over time, what we're seeing is that the broader solutions in our society are made up of, you know, collective action that involves business, it involves government, it involves civic actors and civil society and nonprofit groups. So everybody has to be professional, and everybody has to be good at communications and good at organizing their work, and good to their staff. So in fact, I've had to learn the same sort of management and other leadership skills that are valuable in other areas. So, you know, you can certainly come into the field of nonprofit now with a business degree. There's many ways that you can cross over and do interesting things. And just to say that, you know, don't be afraid if it's not a pathway that anybody understands who's around you. There's, you know, opportunities to bring skills across. And I'm sure that, you know, there's going to be things coming up now in the digital space in the next decades that we couldn't even dream of right now, or certainly when I was going through my first career decisions.
Yeah, and I think that one thing somebody has asked in the chat here is, should people that are in this period of transition consider volunteer or unpaid internships as a way to gain some skills in a tough economy? I see Colleen nodding her head, yes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that strategy. I mean, the rules are different now. Maybe we wouldn't have said the same thing a little bit earlier, because some people are worried about devaluing themselves if they offer to work for free. But here's your chance to pivot and to kind of leap and experiment with something new. For me, I will tell you that, you know, as I mentioned in my introduction, you know, I coach for Google, and that's a tremendous experience for me. It would never have happened if back in 2009, we were living in London and with the kids, and I was trying to figure out how to rebuild my career in the UK. And my husband knew someone who knew someone at Google. So I got a meeting with an HR person and I offered to coach for free. And it was the smartest decision I ever made. So I thought, you know, here's a chance for me to get into an organization where I'd really love to do some work. And yes, if they think that I'm not worth my value, or, you know, not worth a lot because I'm not charging anything, that's a risk I'm going to take. But I think this is where I'm meant to be, the kind of work I'm meant to do. And if I put my best self forward there and do the best possible work that I can, they'll see my value, and that will roll into paid work, which is exactly what happened for me. So anyway, one small sample size, but significant impact in my career from that one move of saying, I have experience, or I have knowledge, I have interest, I have passion, whatever, and I'm willing to offer that to you out of the goodness of my heart as a learning experience or networking experience or what have you. And then we'll just see where this goes.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And many of us are dealing with workplaces where people have unfortunately been furloughed. So we kind of need help, which sounds awful. You don't want to take advantage of anybody, but if a college student just graduated, said they want to come in and help with some marketing or website work or social media work, yeah, there's probably a lot of places that would say, sure, we could use the help right now. And you know, there's legal issues there with paying people, but it's an idea worth considering. Before we wrap this up, I guess the last thing that makes sense to just give a little bit of a plug to is this idea of continuing to be mentors at a time when we're already stretched. So I'll give each of you just a brief chance to make a plug maybe for ways that women can continue to give back to other women, even when we're already stretched pretty thin. So Allison, your mic's on, so go ahead. Allison, you can be first.
Sure, happy to. And this is just fresh in my mind because I mentioned that one woman who I reached out to after 4 or 5 years, purely because I had interviewed with her at one point, and she's been a wonderful contact over the last few weeks as I navigate my change. So my commitment is to certainly follow up and meet with whomever reaches out to me. And that's one. And two is to follow up with some of the mentors that I've had and mentees over the years. So I personally, those are my two goals: to check in with the mentees. You know, I had a legal assistant when I was at the law firm, two wonderful legal assistants. One ended up going back to law school and is graduating this year as well. And it's been really interesting to connect with her here and there over the years, but recently more so, to learn about how she's navigating this sort of pandemic and process. And then reaching out to my mentors, who always offer wonderful advice, you know, critical sometimes, and sometimes very supportive. And that's why one person in particular is a wonderful mentor. And then obviously being receptive to those who reach out to me and just being committed to that.
Absolutely. Robin and Colleen, final words, ladies, before we wrap up.
Sure. I would say, go ahead, Colleen.
I wouldn't be in my line of work if I didn't love mentoring, so I'm happy to help anyone. But I want to give a suggestion. I think it's sometimes intimidating to approach someone about being your mentor. They're not quite sure what to say. And in the vein of resources, I'm going to recommend a book called Who is in Your Personal Boardroom. You could download it for free on Kindle. And the authors of this book have identified the 12 most common roles that we should have in our network in order to have a full, robust surrounding ourselves with people who can really help us be inspirers or nerve givers or information providers or what have you. And each chapter of this free book on Kindle tells you how to approach that particular role, what kind of questions they like to answer, how do you ask them to be your mentor, etc. So that's my 2 cents on this one.
Excellent. Robin, final word.
I think we need a whole page of Colleen's tips. I like them all. I would say check in more. I mean, at my work, we've been, taking the opportunity to really connect a bit more often And really just building on that, don't assume people are okay, ask them. You know, we can't read body signals, we're not bumping into somebody over a coffee. Make sure you really ask people if they're doing okay. It's a tough time, and I think people appreciate that little bit of an extra reach out to them. So I'm trying to do that with everybody I work with.
Excellent point. I cannot thank you all enough. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to each one of you, and I think we could go on for 3 more hours, but we're respectful of everyone's time, and they probably have other Zoom meetings to get to and obligations. It's now my pleasure to introduce Brenda Lyons, parent 12, 14, and 18, Thayer trustee, who will provide some closing remarks. Brenda is an executive vice president and head of product for State Street Global Services. In addition to serving on Thayer's board of trustees, Brenda is a member of the board of directors for State Street Syntel Services Private Limited and State Street Foundation. Brenda is also a member of the board of directors for Big Sisters of Greater Boston's. And as Ted mentioned at the start of the program, it's Brenda we can thank for being here today. She started this with fellow trustee Kathy Horgan 7 years ago. So thank you to their vision and generosity. And Brenda, take it away.
Great, thank you. And thank you all for joining today. Thank you all for speaking. You guys had great advice. And so thank you, Kelly, Colleen, Robin, and Allison. You know, I think if someone asked Kathy and I 3 months ago if we could do this virtually via Zoom or WebEx or whatever app everyone uses, we would have probably laughed and said, nope, that wouldn't work. And I think we've all become experts at doing this. And I think this worked beautifully. We were able to reach probably more people than we could have reached if we hosted this in Boston. And just watching the Q&A go back and forth and all the interaction, it's been quite terrific. So thank you all. And I also want to say thank you to Chrissy, Rachel, and Melissa, who do a lot of the legwork on this and make this all happen. Chrissy in particular, I think she's pulled us together on many occasions. And so I think that's a great recognition. And then of course to Ted, who has supported this also from the beginning. Ted has been a great advocate for this and for many other gender and diversity matters at the school. So thank you very much, Ted. One of the things I'm proud of is the resiliency and perseverance that everyone continues to show. It has been difficult over the past 3 months, I think, regardless of what your family situation is, regardless of where you live, regardless of your home situation. You know, you see people with offices set up in their bedroom. You do get to meet a lot of kids. I do WebEx all day long from 6:30 in the morning, sometimes till 10 or 11 at night, with a break for dinner and a break for a walk. So you're on WebEx all day. I've met kids, I've met dogs, I've met all sorts of different things that are living in people's homes. And it's a challenge, but I think we're all learning to adjust and we're all learning to respect each other a little bit differently. And I think one other thing that we have found too is we're all connecting on a personal level that's different than when you're in the office. And I think that is really good for us as well. So I hope we all learn as a result of this. In closing, I'll just say that we will host an 8th event next year. I don't know what it's going to look like. None of us do. Maybe we'll be back in person again. Maybe we'll be doing some combination of in-person or virtual. But regardless of what it is, we will figure out what we need to do to bring ourselves together again, because I think it's a great event and we all learn a lot from each other. So thank you all for joining. And again, thank you to Chrissy, Melissa, and Rachel for pulling this together.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we appreciate your time. Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.